in the audience for joining us today. I'm particularly excited to have this conversation today, not only because I've had the pleasure of conducting a variety of research in the luxury sector, and I'd like to believe that I'm also a consumer, but also because the panelists we've assembled today are truly phenomenal and really bring a unique view to the conversation on how luxury consumers are evolving today. Before I allow the participants or our panelists to introduce themselves, I just want to note that Gemine Rawane from Versace is joining us from Europe. She's based in Europe, and we're having a little bit of technology difficulties. So there may be a point in the conversation where we have to opt to just have her audio over her video. So I just ask for your patience as that potentially happens. So without further ado, let's dig in. I would love for each of these ladies to introduce themselves by telling me their titles, role, and a short description of a recent project or initiative that you're working on that touches the luxury consumer, so we can all have an idea of how your work in this space really manifests. So with that, I would love for Aram to start. So on to you, Aram.
Thank you, Janelle. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Aram Chaudhry. I'm the Vice President of Marketing for Beauty for Parfum Christian Dior. I've been in the role for about 4 years, so I oversee everything for the US from a marketing standpoint for makeup and skincare. A project that I've been working on, my gosh, I work on 100 projects, as I'm sure we all do at a time, but most notably, I would say the launch of a new foundation called Forever Foundation. It's my little plug. Which we have a beautiful new spokesmodel, Yara Shahidi. So a big piece of what I've been working on is really how do we bring in a new consumer, a more diverse and younger consumer. And it's been through this new foundation launch. So it's everything from the shade range to the spokesmodel edits for advertising, the communication, everything that will touch the consumer. And I think everything in Dior is luxury. So that's sort of where I am in terms of the luxury space.
Wonderful. Dana, you're up next.
Thank you, Janelle. My name is Dana Powles. I'm a managing director at JP Morgan Chase. I oversee our Sapphire card partnerships, as well as our newly announced Sapphire Airport Lounge strategy. So what I'd say we're working on, similar to Aram, we're working on a lot of different projects. I would say the Sapphire Airport Lounge strategy, which will be coming to life very soon, is probably one of the most exciting things we're working on right now. The Airport Lounge is a space where we really think we can make an impact on the customer's end-to-end travel journey. And I won't share too much, but we're really excited to bring that to life over the next several months.
Wonderful. Trisha, you're up next.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Trisha Glynn. I'm a partner at Advent International, and I lead consumer investing both in North America and globally for the firm. And so I've been involved with brands like Lululemon, Olaplex, and in a number of other brands across sectors. I think that were in the bio. And a recent project, I've been spending a lot of time, like some of the other panelists, in the luxury beauty space. And so really thinking about the intersections between beauty and health and wellness in some areas, as we think about some of our most recent brands, most notably Laura Mercier, which we just acquired in December.
Wonderful, thank you. I was about to pass it to Gemini, but I see that we lost her video. So if you can hear us, Gemini, feel free to introduce yourself. Okay, I think she might join, but what I would love to do next is kind of a creative exercise, or weird, depending how you guys think about it. I would love for you to come up with a nickname for yourselves, but not any old nickname. I'm interested in a luxury consumer nickname that helps me understand what's most important when you're thinking about this category, when you're trying to connect with consumers in this category and such. So I'm trying to decide who to call on first. I see your big smile, Dana, as well. So Dana, you go first. Do you have a luxury consumer nickname that you can share with us?
I would say it's Customer Perspective Powles. And the reason I choose that, I work and lead my team to really think about how experience the product that we are developing or putting into market. What is the end-to-end experience? How are we making it frictionless? That really drives a lot of our strategy and how we bring our products to life. Thinking about customer first.
Okay. Customer First Powell's. Trisha, you're up next. Nickname.
All right, do no harm, Glenn. Because these, in the luxury brand space, even more than other spaces, these brands stand the test of time over decades, centuries, right? And so staying incredibly true to what the brand really means while you figure out how the world is modernizing is just incredibly important.
Wonderful. Aram, you're next.
I would say the matchmaker, because you have to ensure there's some like kind of basic qualities, whether it's two people or a person and a product. It has to be visually appealing. It has to like, kind of fit those basic needs, age, height, location. But it really is that harder piece of like the intangible. What is going to make two things really fit together, hopefully for a lifetime. And what people are willing to spend their money on, and it's the value proposition. So it's like you can kind of have those basic things, but to be a true matchmaker, you have to know like that je ne sais quoi, if you will, to bring two people together.
Love that. Gemini, if you can hear us, do you want to jump in with a nickname? Okay.
Yes, I would go with the outlier. Sorry, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yes, the
Can you
outlier.
guys
Tell
hear
me
me?
why.
So I'd go with the outlier, and yeah, and it's so my background was in investment banking, private equity, and also as somebody of African origin, working up in the luxury space, tend to come at the world with a slightly different perspective. And my experiences also to date have taken me from the continent of Africa to the US, Europe, and in Asia. So coming in from perspective, you tend to see things built brick silos is quite different, and also to build and see results together.
Wonderful. I love that. The outlier. Good for us to keep in mind. So you guys did really wonderfully with this, and it really gives me some great things to think about in terms of how you think about the category. The first question that I have for you is a really basic one, but I know there could be a lot of variety here. I'm really curious how you define the luxury consumer. And, you know, I'm really curious how they're evolving in your opinion, what might be different or unexpected. So with that, Dana, if you can sort of kick us off
So
with this
based
question.
bridges across different functions to see how you can, based on that perspective definitely helps bringing in a more versatile view of how we can drive into the organizational.
Dana, go for it.
Great, thank you. So how do we think about luxury? I think one of the most interesting things around the definition of luxury to me is how it has evolved and what it means to different generations, right? So I think the definition of luxury for, somebody who might be a baby boomer or older is very different from the definition of luxury for a millennial or a Gen Z. And so we are really focused on identifying what the different categories of luxury are, what that means to each of those consumers, and how we can develop products to meet their needs. So what we see with the Sapphire Reserve card is the older millennial is really focused more on experiences than things. It's how do you elevate the everyday versus having that one big wow moment. So creating those moments throughout is really how we think about what the luxury journey is for our customers and what types of things they might be looking to seek. And that's what drives our decisions on value proposition, partnerships we might be pursuing, or additional benefits that we add to our customers card.
Wonderful, thank you. Aram, do you want to jump in with your definition?
Sure. I mean, I would echo everything Dana said. I think it's evolved so much. It certainly isn't about household income. I know we talked about that, prior, or education or location, the democratization of beauty or luxury, if you will, with e-retail has certainly shifted things. I think it's about some level of aspiration and something around bringing happiness, and that's what we do a lot with Dior. There are a lot of lipsticks out there. In a way, I would say my category is sort of the gateway to luxury because it's a $37 lipstick versus a $4,000 book tote. That it is a way to feel a part of the brand and everything that we do, from the product, craftsmanship to the formulation, the shades, all of that. we're trying to recruit a much younger consumer, so it's keeping them in mind. I never thought I would see Dior all over TikTok like I have been, but that is luxury, and that is the new luxury consumer.
Trisha, any thoughts to build on the definition?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're hearing from all of us is a fairly long time ago now, you had a luxury consumer that was actually the luxury consumer and was luxury across many, many categories. I hate to use the word, but there's sort of a democratization where you still have some customers that are luxury in all points, but the vast majority of consumers choose where they want to play in that next level experience. And then even higher level, the global nature of the luxury consumer is really unique market by market. And so for any of the brands we invest in, we have to be really thoughtful about where exactly is this brand playing or item and where can it play. And so it's a more complicated answer than it used to be.
Mm-hmm. These are definitely massive shifts. I'm curious, anything in particular has been surprising for any of you when you think about the definition of this consumer? I mean, obviously, Aram, you shared being on TikTok is a surprise, right? And that's really a channel that a lot of brands have to flock to now. But anything else really surprised any of you about this? Trisha, you want to go for it?
Sure. I mean, the last 2 years has been eye-opening, right? Because so much of luxury was in-person customer service and open borders. And when that changed during the pandemic, you were stuck in this world where luxury consumers had to engage virtually. And I think that's been a time period where some brands have done incredibly well, like TikTok, right? I mean, the brands who have embraced it, it matters, and others haven't. And so it's I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but this point of how brands innovate, do no harm, but really think about how the world's changing and how their brand fits or doesn't, or more importantly, just how it fits. I think it's showing, frankly, where some of the most interesting talent is in the industry, which teams can really pivot while staying true to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would just add to Trisha's point because I think she's so right about the pandemic and how that shifted everything. And I think what's surprising being in the luxury space is we control so much, right? That's usually the approach. It's a push out of an image, a product, a communication strategy. And I think with everything that happened with the pandemic and people spending more time certainly on social and sort of being the voice of the brand, it sort of made all luxury, I would say at least my luxury brand, but most luxury brands shift their strategy and kind of have to be more consumer centric as opposed to, we've created it, now come and love it and purchase. So it's more of a two-way dialogue with consumer really leading, which I've seen in my like kind of traditional CPG days at P&G, but certainly not, in the luxury world.
And I
We
would just
talked a
add
little
to
bit.
that.
Go for it.
Sorry. I would just add to that. Completely agree that the pandemic really changed a lot of ways in which people like live their life and interact with brands. And I would say less surprising, but just more, obvious observation of just the ways in which consumers consume and receive information in marketing, right? Which had been happening, but obviously the pandemic accelerated that. And just traditional ways in which luxury products normally communicated to their customers or got their brand out there. And just the shift of this, local micro influencer really being where people are going for their information or what is the new luxury item I should have has really been, a switch, I think, for all of us on this call and especially here at Chase as to what's the best way to define luxury. And it may not be traditional marketing channels that we used in the past and really opening our exposure into these other places like the social media channels, like you mentioned with TikTok, Aram.
I'm curious. We've touched on the pandemic. We've touched on sort of a greater reliance on technology today. Knowing that affluent consumers tend to be early adopters with technology and media, are there other trends? Is there anything related to digital transformation that you're seeing that's helping to drive this evolution at all? Trisha, you want to jump in?
Sure. So, of the trends that I'm paying attention to right now across all of consumer, live selling is one. Question mark how broad it goes. And if it's truly as successful here as it is in China, where it's just a massive, massive industry at this point, and still high growth. And so that's one question mark I have about how this consumer, how brands will embrace that or not in a luxury way. The other trend we're all paying attention to is secondhand commerce, which the industry has flirted with, some brands taking it more seriously than others. There's plenty of questions around the metaverse right now and NFTs, and I would just be speculating along with everybody else exactly how big that ultimately gets in dollars. But ultimately, how we buy is changing. I think that's the punchline for me.
Mm-hmm. I'm also really curious about the premiumization of mass categories. And at the same time, we're seeing a lot of these luxury categories becoming more accessible. And so I want to chat a little bit about that. Dana, do you have any thoughts there?
I think also, I'm coming from JP Morgan Chase, so we cover the full spectrum, right, of consumers and segments. I do think that what we talked about before around the definition of luxury has changed. You want to target younger folks who are aspiring to luxury brands and introduce them to the brand, and then folks who might already be in a traditional income, average household income that is defined as luxury. How they want to experience life and brands is also changing, right? So I think that what you see is this, intersection of mass and luxury playing together, because that really is how people are increasingly living their lives. So again, back to this notion of people are looking for experiences and not things. And sometimes it doesn't mean that you're staying at the top hotel. It could be that the hotel you're staying at or along your travel journey, it's frictionless and it's easy for you to move from one place to the next. So those are the reasons that we are kind of seeing this cross-pollination of mass and luxury. And I think we'll continue to see it, especially as new generations like Gen Z really change the way in which they experience life and want to experience brands, as we've talked about.
I'm also curious, who's doing it well outside of your organization potentially? Is there a brand or a product that you find connects with luxury consumers or consumers who are looking for luxury experiences in a masterful way, in your opinion? Aram, you want to weigh in there?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Tesla. I think that it's a very fascinating kind of model, if you will. Believe it or not, they created like an entry level, car, and so many people put themselves on. They created a waiting list. There was supply demand. There was a rarity to it, yet still an offering for at a lower price point, if you will. But really playing on the value, right? This value of electric, sustainable, and without compromising style and aesthetic. So I think they've really done an interesting job from a luxury standpoint that is appealing to young and older. So I think that Tesla would be my case study.
Trisha, any case studies or thoughts on interesting brands or products at the moment?
So Aram's is better than mine, so I like the Tesla answer. And it also makes the point around sustainability, which we haven't touched on yet, but if the luxury sector doesn't embrace sustainability and figure out how to do it at scale, because by the way, they have the margins too, that's going to be a problem long term for consumers. You see customer willingness to pay changing across the board. And if there were luxury brands who were doing a better job telling the story, impacting supply chains, I think you'd see a shift of dollars.
I think the other thing that people tend to enjoy or appreciate about Tesla, not only from a consumer perspective, but also just from a business perspective, is that it really is an ecosystem. How they're able to engage with that consumer and sort of like surround them is rather interesting. When your teams or your organizations are looking for inspiration in general, where do you go when it comes to connecting with this consumer? What do you do? Give me a sense of that. Dana?
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Sorry. It's a great question. I think, again, because we're really seeing the luxury segment span so wide from everything from entry to establish luxury. You know, I would say for inspiration, it is everything from social media, right? TikTok, Instagram, there's a lot of inspiration. There's a lot of content that's created in those channels that we can learn a lot from, to traditional ways. And obviously, we always look at what our competitors are doing as well and see what's working, what's not. And then, you know, working through research and traditional channels is really how we go look for inspiration. But we encourage our employees really to live the life of the products. We value diversity of experience, and we really build out our teams such that we've got folks coming from different industries, different walks of life. And I think having that diverse team really does drive and create inspiration and new ideas of how we can continue to push the envelope forward and create amazing products for the luxury consumer.
I love that. That live the life of the product is really going to stick in my head. Fill in the blank for me. This is kind of an interesting question. For us, doing blank for or with affluent or luxury consumers is the most difficult because of blank. I'm going to say it again. For us, doing blank for or with affluent consumers is the most difficult because of blank. Trisha?
It's terrible for my business, but I'm going to say like forecasting, and you can pick a less nerdy way of saying it, but like forecasting where luxury consumers are going to go, I think is really hard, which is why we don't try that hard to do that. We just say, do we really believe in this brand? And then we focus on innovation. Because if we can truly create better product, better experience, like talk to the consumers more directly over the course of time, then year to year it doesn't matter. But the luxury sector does have trend and fashion, and people get it right sometimes and people get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah. Aram, fill in the blank for me. For us, doing blank for or with affluent consumers is the most difficult because of blank.
Oh my God, Janelle, that's a tough one. I mean, I think for us, like we're a French brand, right? So I'm not going to do the exercise exactly with the blanks, but I can give you kind of a sense of what's a challenge on our side. You know, we are a luxury French brand, and I'm just thinking skincare in particular. That is, you know, very much about, you know, solution, problem, unscented. Like the U.S. consumer does not want a lot of the, you know, the elements that necessarily exist in a beautiful French product. So I think our challenge is like, how do you stay true to what the brand is while still being very consumer centric? So I think that is our, you know, the constant conundrum in certain categories. I think we've tackled it certainly in fragrance and makeup, but I think skincare in particular, it's, and then just going back to your earlier question, I was just thinking, you know, where do we get inspiration? It's really my team, honestly. Like I have a millennial mentor who's teaching me a lot, and then, you know, I'm bringing in some younger people. So because I think you have to sort of stay up to date, and it's not necessarily going to come from research and reading. It's going to be, as Dana said, like everyone living their authentic lives and experiences. So, so that's really where those insights come from for me.
Love that. Dana, dare I ask you to fill in the blank? For us, doing blank for with affluent consumers is the most difficult because of blank.
I would probably kind of take the same approach as Aram. I think, you know, we're a bank, obviously, so our challenges usually stem from making sure that what we're creating is, you know, compliant and within the regulatory guardrails that we need to play in. So that is, I wouldn't call it a challenge, but it's just a different type of opportunity, and it's a different type of problem statement. And we still strive every day to create amazing experiences and luxury products for our customers. We just have that kind of added like checkbox that we need to go through before we can bring things to life.
If you could explore the behaviors of luxury consumers in a category that is not your own, that you feel could give perspective, what category would you want to explore, Aram? I'm curious.
You know, the music industry, because I feel like there are these artists that are really, you know, setting trends, they're key influencers, they have a connection. I even look at like my 14-year-old nephew who is diehard, you know, I'm gonna say it, Kanye fan. And there's just such a, you know, there's an art component, there's a value component, and I think they really do set trends in big ways that just become adopted, if you will, whether it's fashion, whether it's dance. So I think that music industry really has some true like thought leaders, and I think there's something about that industry that I think I would want to spend a little more time with. Even these festivals, I mean, the way that people flock to them, the fashion, everything. So that would be my industry of choice.
Love that. Trisha, what
So
would you want to explore?
Yeah, it's not an industry exactly, but I would want to know how the younger luxury consumers think about privacy. Because if we're in a more digital world, how people are thinking about sharing information, not sharing, seeing others, that's going to be incredibly important for a bunch of large decisions all of these brands and businesses need to make. Data privacy, obviously.
Yeah. Next question I'm going to ask to the group. So Ipsos conducts this affluent survey. They've been doing it for the last 45 years. And I was looking at the most recent data from 2021, particularly looking at Gen Z affluent consumers. And I was just really struck by some of the numbers that I saw, because I think we all hear that Gen Z is more diverse, but particularly sort of taking this affluent lens and this Gen Z lens, I was honestly surprised at how diverse. So literally, they are 2 times more LGBTQ plus, 20% more female, 20% more Black people, 50% more Hispanic people, 60% more Asian people. I'm literally surprised at just how diverse it is. And I'm curious, when you hear numbers like this, when you hear literally how demographics are changing, particularly in the US, how do you think that affects how brands connect with or market to affluent consumers today and in the future? Dana, do you want to take a stab at that?
Sure. So first of all, I think those are great stats, and I think it's great to see that within the affluent segments, there's increasing diversity of people, experiences, lived life, et cetera. I would say in terms of how we think about marketing to affluent customers, JP Morgan Chase has been very vocal and forward around our commitment to diversity, whether it be to our employees, but also to the communities in which we serve. And so that is very much, a message and a sentiment from the top down with our organization. And what that means is that's just a baseline, how we think about marketing, how we think about our customers, and how we think about the products that we build. We always have a lens organically, everybody, not just people of color or women in the organization, of, is this a diverse, is this a diverse product? Is this going to meet the needs of different types of people? So it really is, for me, it's in our culture, I would say, organically, without even hearing that stat, as to how we think about how we do business, who we do business with, the types of products that we design, making sure we have diverse suppliers, that we're working with diverse agencies, diverse vendors who can help us bring a diverse point of view to the products that we're bringing to market, marketing campaigns, et cetera. But that really does permeate through our organization. And it's, I've been at Chase for 4 years, and it's really impressive to see that what you hear, maybe at an investor day, really is practiced day to day across the entire.
Aram, do you want to jump in and share a little bit of perspective there as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's same. Those are great stats. I think as brands, we just need to lean into it in a bigger way. I think, similar to what Dana was saying at Dior, there really is a strong commitment. It's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but there is a strong commitment to having more inclusive assets, shades. And I think step one is just, a consumer being able to see him or herself in the product, knowing that there's the right offering there. But I think at the core of it, it starts with kind of who's in the organization, what's running, who's running the organization. So I say it all the time. I'm like, we can't PowerPoint our way through DEI. We just have to do it. So it just comes down to having, the right people at the table and the voices there, which I think we are really committed to and have made, tremendous progress with. I think makeup in particular is easier compared to fragrance and skincare, because it's, you can control a lot more But it is a journey, and I don't think having just a spokesmodel is enough. You know, it's really how do you connect with this consumer in a bigger way. So we're kind of having this conundrum of like, do you do something explicit and overt, or do you just kind of, you know, lead it into the culture, and eventually, you know, everyone will come along the journey. The good news is that most people do find Dior to be an aspirational brand, but it is a journey.
Can I get in? Yeah, please.
First.
So I'm thrilled it's moving in the right direction, but my guess is the absolute numbers look bad, even if the percentage growth look good. And so if you think about any market, right, to have diverse luxury consumers, you need both wealth distribution distinctly in different ways, and you need companies creating products that speak to new consumers. Very few products are truly universal to everybody. There's some, and it's amazing, but you need people thinking about these luxury consumers in mind. And so my guess is we have a long way to go on both fronts. And so for the businesses I'm involved in, I try to make sure when we think about product innovation or our marketing messaging or how we're connecting with different communities, we're doing like the same quality job on all metrics. And it's hard, even with a brand like Olaplex, where, for those who don't know, it's a premium hair care brand. It fixes the keratin bonds in your hair at the molecular level for all hair types. And so rarely in my career, yeah, it's great. Rarely in my career have I seen a product that is like vegan, BPA free, cruelty free, like non-toxic, climate forward, and works on every single hair type. All hair has keratin. Well, there are different products needed for black hair versus Caucasian hair versus Asian hair, not for repair. And so it's universal. And even still, we need to be really thoughtful about speaking to all hairstylists, all communities, making sure we're hearing about people's concerns, because as we evolve from our core products, maybe we do want to think about different need states. And so you can't you can't fix these numbers to be even better and on an absolute basis get to where they need to be unless you're trying to solve people's actual concerns and listen to them.
It's a wonderful point and sentiment. I know for a lot of the research that I've been conducting in this space and more generally when it comes to brands becoming more inclusive over the years, one of the things that I'm seeing is what a brand does in the workplace is just as, if not more important than what they do in the marketplace in order to be really authentic or seen as authentic for the consumers that buy their brands. And I think everything that you guys have touched on is really speaking to that. Is there anything else that you think is critical in that regard? Sort of that workplace marketplace connection and what consumers, luxury consumers, need to see to advance that or to make advancements. Dana?
I think you hit it on the head. I think without a diverse workplace, it is challenging to create products that will speak to diverse customers, period. You know, to the point that was made before, you can't like research your way into it or look at stats your way into it. You really need to have a broad representation of people in your organization, on your team, and teams that you partner with internally to help you create diverse people create diverse products. And so I think that having that internal focus on the workplace and ensuring you've got diversity of experiences, backgrounds, really is the critical piece to removing this kind of echo chamber and creating something that is, you know, for one group of people. But that's critical.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts on this topic before I move on to the next one? Okay. I'm curious. Each of your firms gathers a ton of data on consumers. If you could wave a magic wand, and seriously, this wand is magic. If you could wave a magic wand and literally either figure out a new source of data to collect on your consumers or customers, or if you could do something really interesting with that data to better connect with your consumers, what would you do? So it's an either or question, right? Either what data would you source and why, or how would you better connect with your consumer and why? Aram?
I mean, I want to steal Trisha's answer on the privacy. I think that's so good. I definitely want to do that.
Tell me why. Tell me why. Why is the privacy an important one for you?
Well, I mean, I think in a lot of ways we see the pendulum, like honestly, in life, right? The pendulum is constantly swinging one way or the other. At one point, it's all about like, super shiny and beautiful and filtered Instagram, and now it's swung over to like completely like, naked face, authentic TikTok, and who knows if it's going to swing back at some point. And so I feel the same thing with content. At one point everyone wanted to share everything, and now people are not wanting to share as much. And this next generation is growing up not knowing what it was like to not be able to share everything, and how they're able to kind of manage that piece of it, and still sort of talk about, at the end of the day with luxury, a lot of it is a little bit of showing off what you've got. So how do you kind of have that balance between, from a brand standpoint, wanting people to talk about your product and show it off, but also having them have some semblance of privacy? So I thought that was like a kind of a brilliant study, Trisha, that I'd like to go in with you on. But then I also think, in terms of if I had a magic wand, we do a lot of test and learns, so we put like little bits of money against things. That just seems to be the right way to do it. If I could wave a magic wand, I'd want to put as much money into, kind of the traditional marketing levers, into something that would really connect with this consumer that we keep talking about. We say a lot, we want to bring in younger, we want to bring in diverse, but, we have, a little carved out amount of money that will test and learn, and it's never enough to quite move the needle. So I almost want to like just put it all in like Vegas and see where it lands, just knowing that we all went in like, went in with the best intention and the right way, because I think it gets a little challenging to always kind of be the second mover. So that would be, if I could wave my magic wand, I'd be the first mover on something truly revolutionary to bring in, a more diverse consumer to a luxury brand.
Dana, what would you do with your magic wand?
I think, as an industry, there's an opportunity to leverage information that people have consented to sharing with you to really create personalized experiences and recommendations. And again, it keeps going back to me to this, like, how do you live your life in a frictionless way, right? So how do I know I booked a trip, I'm flying out of LaGuardia, I get a push notification of great things to do at LaGuardia in the airport, whether it's go to a lounge or, take part of another service or offer that's there. And I also have seamless and meaningful recommendations on what I might want to do in my destination. Let's say my destination is Miami. So I think being able to, and this net hasn't really been cracked anywhere, right? Email has been around now for a while, but we haven't figured out how to curate the email, how to make it less spammy. You really have like subscribe, unsubscribe, or send it to me once a week or once a month, right? But we haven't gotten to a place where we are able to curate information that you receive in a meaningful way that the customer views as valuable. And I think that's like a broad opportunity, but especially as we think about luxury and the luxury consumer, and we really look at luxury consumer as they want to remove friction from their life. They want things to be easy, but they also want to have like great and authentic experiences. And maybe because of where they are in their life, they don't have time always to research what that experience would be, right? But like taking your preferences and really kind of saying, hey, I think you would love this restaurant, right? Based on your previous things, activities that you have done. I think that to me is really the goal that I'm sure most companies aspire to, but leveraging data in a meaningful way, right? That customers have consented to share with you in a meaningful way to make recommendations and help them live their lives better, right? Because I think that's really the goal.
What would you do with your magic wand, Trisha?
I want data too, like Dana. And I want step change data, not incremental data. And so for any of my brands, like for example, I want to know for our community, our customers, like what are their bucket list items? Like what are the massive things that this group of people want out of their life in some period of time that we can see if this brand can help deliver?
I love that. You guys are so good with these questions. The next thing I'm curious about, and we've touched a little bit on this, is affluent consumers tend to be more engaged with media and technology. They tend to be early adopters. And it makes sense, I think logically, they have more money to experiment with these things. knowing that they're avid streamers, early adopters, what do you think of this? How does this influence marketing, product, media strategy? We know that, we've touched on TikTok and sort of digital transformation in general, but tell me a little bit more, like when you think about the fact that they're more entrenched in media and technology, what does that mean for the luxury consumer? You're smiling. I love your smile, Trisha, so I'm gonna call on you for
I
this one.
tell. I have a terrible Zoom face, like it like tells you exactly what I'm doing. Yeah, I just think the luxury market can't ignore that, right? If these customers want to be first movers, then they're going to be first movers, and it's going to be to a mass brand or a mass experience if the luxury channel doesn't figure it out. And so there's a number of luxury brands I really admire who have a head of innovation, who is constantly working and investing to test and learn and figure out how to implement all the moves in the market for that brand, for instance. And I just think it's beyond critical.
Mm-hmm. Dana, any thoughts there?
I think it's, I echo everything that Trisha said, right? And what we've said before, which is you have to participate in those mediums. You need to figure out the best way for your brand to participate in those mediums, and really to talk to the affluent customer. And I think, again, it's kind of back to this like marketing question of like, how do you communicate? What's the right way? How do people want to receive information? How do you filter through the noise? Right. So it's a little bit of kind of the step change data we talked about before, but brands need to figure out the right way to engage with those platforms to reach their target audience. And I think there's a lot of, for what it's worth, a lot of testing and learning, right, that's happening. There's a lot of opportunities to do things better, but I think that it's, media, social media, entertainment are really where these customers are focused and where they're going to live their life. And there's no way around the fact that luxury brands have to participate there.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts to round this out, Aram?
I mean, I think Trisha and Dana said it very well. I think the question also sometimes becomes, how does a luxury brand show up on some of these mediums, and does it feel luxury enough? Even going back in time to podcasts at one point, when Serial first came out, I don't know if anyone remembers that, but it was sort of this riveting, story of, this trial, a crime drama, if you will. And it was kind of the first to start this. Now, it's been overproliferated with podcasts, but I remember at the time thinking, like, how does a brand show up? Because all I kept hearing about was MailChimp. And I'm like, you have this engaged audience and they have a sponsor, but, it's not considered luxury. So no brand ever, luxury brand ever did it. But if you were to really slice out who's the consumer, who's listening, are they educated? Are they, I think there are ways and mediums that luxury brands could participate in, without it being kind of the mold of what is and what is not luxury. So I think it kind of just takes me back in time to that, but punctuates again the metaverse. Like, it's so unknown, but I think there's a lot of things that come out that we don't realize could be a prime consumer moment, from a luxury standpoint.
Yeah. Gemini, I want to see if you're connected. If you are, do you want to take a stab at this question as well? Oh, okay. We'll move on to the next question. So we're a group of women here, right? And I'm curious, how, if at all, has being a woman or a person of color or both made you better at connecting with affluent consumers or luxury consumers, basically with non-mainstream audiences? Since I think traditionally when people think luxury, they have an idea in their mind, and oftentimes it's like a 50-something-year-old white man. So with that, give me your thoughts. Aram, do you want to try this one?
Yeah, I mean, I just happen to work in a space that is mostly marketed to women, so I definitely feel like I have a competitive advantage. But certainly being a woman of color has been, it's not that there aren't in the beauty space, but I've been in it for a very long time, and I'm so happy to see how there are more, sitting at the table. But But I think it just goes back to like who is the luxury consumer, and I think it's shifted so much. But I do, I will say I have the competitive advantage of being a woman marketing to women, and also having that voice to say. I think Dana said it best with like, diverse people make diverse products. So yeah.
Trisha, thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it, look, it can be more difficult, right? We all know that. We've all lived those moments. But if you think about the opportunity, I just look across the whole consumer landscape, especially in luxury, and say, I'm going to get to see things that other people don't necessarily see as opportunities. And by the way, I live with my own biases and filters. And so I need to make sure my teams are as diverse as possible to help me look around corners. But there's just big glaring opportunities, right? Like women's health is so underfunded relative to men's health. It's like we're for 50% of the population. If you look inside so many sub-industries, even in beauty, like we're not yet speaking to everybody equally or giving people equal levels of quality product. And so I do think we can see things differently. I also think natural networks, opportunities like this to speak, by the way, thank you, Janelle, to put our voices out there. How we think about building our teams, building boards, building executive team, all of that is going to both distribute like power and money and opportunity and get people further down the path we need to go.
Mm-hmm. Dana, do you want to weigh in at all?
I concur with everything that's been said. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious, looking through my little list of questions here. We're also women in business. So I'm curious about advice that you've ever received, either related to navigating these spaces or just work in general. What do you think is the single best piece of advice that you've gotten? And I just want to take the opportunity to, hear this from you. Dana?
I think, it sounds very cliche, but bring your whole self to work, right? Really, really is a thing. And I think, be yourself. Don't try to be somebody that you're not. That also encourages your team to think that they can be their self and they can bring their whole self to work. And again, this notion of living the life of the product, feeling that you're in a safe space where you can have a different point of view, you can look differently from somebody else on your team. I think that is really, a great piece of advice and something I would just encourage others, even when you are in rooms where there's nobody that looks like you, which can happen, or you could be in rooms where everybody looks like you. I think it's just important to not try to mask who you are. And I think, that also resonates with what we're seeing, the evolution and the growth of the Gen Z population, which is very much of like uniqueness, and I'm not like everybody else. And, but they demand to live their life and have their experiences in their ways, not in ways that are being dictated to them by traditional channels. And so I think that, those things kind of tie together of like bringing your whole self to work, again, is really going to help you to feel comfortable sharing new or innovative ideas and really driving product innovation. But I would recommend that, and that's been a good piece of advice.
Aram, best piece of advice?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that because I think Dana's exactly right in terms of bringing your authentic self. I think, truthfully, sometimes there's a little bit of like everyone, especially in beauty pre-pandemic, everyone had to look a certain way and dress a certain way. And, no matter how tired you were, you had to put on your makeup and get your hair blown and make it into the office with your heels. And I just think it shifted so much. And, the best piece of advice I got was actually from a friend, Michelle, as well, Hera, where I would sort of say, like, I can't believe that person came in. They had no makeup on. They had no this. Like, and she's like, why don't you just do it yourself? Try. And she was exactly right. Like, I think we hold ourselves to this perfection standard, and it really is sometimes a pressure you're internally putting on yourself, and it didn't shift or change, how I was viewed or how I performed. So I think the best piece of advice is like, put less pressure on yourself and be your authentic.
Trisha.
I love that. I have a different one, but on that note, I remember like the first week we were back in the office, I wore heels, and another woman said, like, come on, we're not doing that again. And I realized if I wear them, people might, because I'm a senior woman here, but if I don't, we could all go to like the low sneaker look, like just anyway. I was speaking to a senior female world leader last fall that I got to interview. And without saying who it is, because I'm not allowed to, it was the basic premise was at some point in your career, you look around and you have sufficient power. And even if you still deal with microaggressions, which you will, or macroaggressions, you have enough power to just handle it, deal with it. And when you realize that, that's when you turn around and start pulling people up. And so it's just mindset shift in your career. When are you going to make the shift to just improvement of the situation versus having to fight through yourself? Because there are just earlier years in your career where it feels like more of a fight. So I found that uplifting, actually, even if it sounds a little dark. I found it really uplifting to hear this woman say she had gotten to that point and then just really on purpose made that mental shift.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love all of this advice. There are a couple areas that we didn't touch on, but before I sort of round it out in the last few minutes that we have, I'm curious, is there something you thought we would talk about today that we haven't yet talked about? And so I'll open it up to you guys in that way before I sort of round it out and wrap this up. Aram?
No, I mean, I feel like you covered quite a bit. I think, one thing we had spoken about is, something that you didn't think you could do before, but now you feel like you can, which I thought was a really interesting, especially as we think about a younger generation and they're much more open and they're much more, like I need a PTO day just for my mental health, like they're just, it's a shift, So I think for me, something that I'm able to do now that I couldn't do before is really have kind of those tough and honest conversations with my team and with my management. It's less of kind of a top-down approach. I think, again, the pandemic shifted everything. A lot more people were able to join meetings. It democratized a lot of the hierarchy. But I think especially coming out of, the murder of George Floyd, there were really some tough conversations that need to be had that we never had in the workplace. And it kind of opened up a floodgate, if you will, to many conversations around many other things. I mean, being able to just say it out loud, like, we need a more diverse customer. What does that mean? We need, we need to stop catering just to older white women. What does that mean? So kind of having that transparency, I think, has been, been really something I don't think I would have ever imagined doing, 10 years ago or however many years ago when I started my career.
Yeah. Trisha, anything you thought we'd talk about that we didn't touch on?
I think what Aram just said was beautifully said.
Yeah. Dana, anything to add in that respect?
Plus one.
Okay. What I'd like to do in the last couple minutes is just sort of wrap this up in a really easy way. I want us to come up with a list of do's and don'ts when we think about the luxury consumer today and what we can do to better connect with them. So I'm hearing a lot of the things, I'll be honest, I took notes as we were talking as well, right? Because I'm like, these are some things I want to remember. And so things that really come to mind in terms of do, let's say, remember that luxury is democratizing. Think about technology. What else would you guys would add in terms of do's?
Can't compromise on quality or experience. I think that just goes hands down. There's a lot of other competitors out there, but what makes luxury truly luxury is the quality of the product or the quality of the experience.
Love that. Dana, any do's?
Yeah, I agree. I love the quality piece, which I don't think we really touched on, but it's a very important point. And then I would say, just do bring like a diverse view, right? We've talked about that, but what's the diverse panel, whether it's inside of your company, outside of your company, an agency that we would be working with to ensure that you're meeting the needs of all luxury consumers.
Any do's in your mind, Trisha, that really stand out, even if we've mentioned them already?
Yeah, do create like wonderful workplaces, right? Where people are dying to work.
So true, making sure that the workplace is in order so that the marketplace can be in order. And I'll put a last call. And is there a don't out there that everyone should remember? Anyone? I think we can
didn't
focus on
say
the
this.
two. Oh, yeah, go for it.
we didn't say this as clearly, but like this is always going to be an industry where creativity and genius matters. And so none of what any of us were saying was like copy other people or copy other business models. It's more just listen really intently and reinterpret.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Great way to wrap this up. Ladies, you were phenomenal. Thank you so much for your time and for contributing to this conversation. Gemini, I'm so sorry that our technology issues prevented you from joining this conversation. So maybe we can figure out a shorter one-to-one of some sort to bring your voice to the table as well, because it is an important one. And with that, Ellen, I will pass it back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you.
I just really want to thank Janelle and our wonderful, wonderful guests for today's candid discussion. And thank you for everyone for joining us. We did record today's presentation. It will be available and emailed out to you later this week. Of course, at any time, we welcome the opportunity to speak with you, so please feel free to reach out. That now concludes today's webinar. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.